The wage gap. The ever-present wage gap. We often hear about, we hear about all the time from these feminists. I mean, if you have a Tumblr account, like every other post is about the wage gap. And I mean, I enjoy Tumblr. I think it's a wonderful website, but I just feel like, I get on there to have some fun. I just honestly feel so attacked. But basically, okay, so the wage gap, right? The wage gap shows us that women earn 77 cents for every dollar a man earns. And you could say, oh, okay, that's not fair. That's not a good thing. But then when you really get into it, you find that what it actually is when you take the aggregate earnings, and that means you collect from all the data sources, so all of the earnings of men, and you can compare them to the aggregate or all the earnings of women in a society in America. You will find that women earn 77 cents for every dollar a man makes. Now the problem with that is there's more men working. Or even if you just got brought down to hourly wages, you'll find that, or not hourly, but year-long wages. You compare the total earnings over a year, and for a man in one position, and you compare that to the woman in the other position, because on average, let's see, what is it? With full-time jobs, men on average work 7% more hours than women. You will find that the men earn more money because they're working more. And so the funny thing here is, if you actually enforce or fix the wage gap as it's presented by the feminists, what you do is you end up causing the reverse, where women work less hours than men, but they earn the same amount. And so theoretically, if they work the same amount as men, then they would actually earn more than men. So that's just, you have to realize, you have to get that perspective of what this wage gap really does to society. We want equality for everybody. We don't want a protected class. We don't want to exclude this class. Now, I understand the concept of, discrimination laws. We're going to say, okay, you can't just fire this person because they're a woman, and you can't pay this woman less than a man for doing the same job. That makes sense. But the thing is, we already have those laws. And yet, the wage gap keeps getting talked about. And really, you have to break it down. You could say, okay, let's break it down to doctors. And even if you break it down to doctors, you'll find that women earn less than men make. I mean, it looks clear, right? And this is the case displayed by Christina Hoff Sommers, I believe, in this video that she did for Prager University. I'll link it in the description. Really fantastic. Does a really great job of explaining it. But the thing is, when you get into it, like in the field of doctorate, you'll find that women are more likely to enter lower paying fields like pediatrics, so become a pediatrician, as opposed to a higher paying field like cardiology, where you'll find more men in cardiology, and you'll find more men in pediatrics, more women in pediatrics. And so what you do here is you actually look at the data, and you find that, in fact, women and men are paid the same amount for the same job. Now, at this point, I suppose you could say, we're going to bring in the patriarchy, right? The omnipresent, oh great, invisible patriarchy, which shapes the minds of women in society. The only ones that are not shaped by the patriarchy are the enlightened feminists. And honestly, I mean, you get rid of all the feminism specific language in here. It sounds like the kind of thing that you'll hear your uncle who thinks the government is ran by lizards talk about. The government is all great and powerful and wants to brainwash us and shape our minds. And then you switch it over, the patriarchy is great and powerful and wants to brainwash us and shape our minds. I mean, honestly, it sounds like a conspiracy theory. It really does. I mean, you say, oh, this sounds like the kind of thing that Alex Jones would be talking about. I mean, except Alex Jones is against feminism. Except in this case, you're talking about, or at least on his side, he's talking about the government brainwashing people. I don't know. Is that one of the conspiracy he believes in? I'm not sure. I'm not even sure anymore. I suppose you could say the patriarchy is just a fancy word for societal pressure, right? The pressure that society puts on us. But the fact is, we all know these women have been out there pushing for girls and women to make it into the STEM fields. We want more women in science, and we want more women in engineering, and we want that creativity in there. And I agree. I think it's a great idea. Get more people in science, get more people in math, get more people in engineering and technology and innovation. That's a great thing. But the problem is, we actually and I'll link the study, but a study actually found that that STEM fields, if you have an equally qualified man and women, women are actually more likely to get hired than a man in the STEM position by 2-to-1 ratio. So the problem here isn't that that society is holding women back. It's actually that women just straight up aren't choosing to work in those fields. I mean, they have the ability, and the funny thing is, these women, when I say these women, I mean, these third wave modern feminists, and not all of them, of course. And there's some that subscribe to the ideology, but they don't go and do gender studies at college. But the ones that go to college and they do gender studies, and this becomes a sort of career path for them. I honestly don't know how gender studies is a career path. I mean, somehow it is. I mean, there's a degree for English. I suppose you can become an English teacher, and so I suppose you can get a gender studies degree and become a gender studies degree teacher. Where was I? I just had to cut it out there because I lost myself in the rambling. But you find these women, they're talking about how we want more women in the fields of science and math and technology, but then the problem there exists. Okay, well, now that they're doing gender studies, who's going to go do math and science? And the answer is the ones that are working. I figure out what you want to do in life, and you go and you work and you do that, and find your passion in life and you dedicate yourself to that. And the ones who find that their passion is science, great. And the ones who find that their passion is technology, great. And if you want to get into politics, great. I mean, we can always use more voices in the political sphere. I mean, I'm a big believer in the sort of factions things that James Madison talked about in the Federalist. I believe it was Federalist paper number 10, where he talked about have more factions to filter out all the bad ideas. So more voices is a good thing. But I don't see how a gender studies degree is productive. It just doesn't seem productive. And so there's so much here. There's so much here. I mean, the wage gap, I mean, we can show that the wage gap is completely false. And the funny thing is, the wage gap it's actually reversed. I mean, if you use the same logic, you'll find that unmarried women in their 20s, women without children in their 20s earn, I believe it's $1.08 for every dollar a man makes. And at least that is men without children in their 20s. It's kind of crazy, isn't it? Now, the thing is, these statistics are so misleading, they're borderline false. They really are. So that's what I'm going to leave you with here. The wage gap is so statistically misleading, it's borderline false.